Whoever makes my son speak will marry me, he repeated, his voice steadier this time despite the tremor in his hands. The champagne in his glass rippled with each heartbeat. $20 million, this estate, and my hand in marriage. I'm not joking. 7-year-old Leo Thorne pressed himself against a marble column, small fingers digging into the cold stone as if it might swallow him whole. His wide eyes, so like his mother's, darted between the stunned guests and his father's rigid form. Not a sound escaped his lips, not even a whimper. It had been exactly 1,095 days since anyone had heard his voice. The announcement shouldn't have happened this way. Marcus had planned to release a formal statement through his PR team tomorrow, a dignified press release offering a substantial reward for successful therapeutic intervention. But watching his son earlier that evening, silently pushing food around his plate, while children of other executives laughed and played, something in him had finally shattered. "Sir?" his assistant whispered urgently at his elbow. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private." Marcus waved him away, eyes scanning the crowd. Medical specialists who had failed him before. Business associates who had sent referrals with hollow promises. Society friends who had stopped inviting Leo to birthday parties because his silence made their children uncomfortable. "I've consulted specialists across 3 continents," Marcus continued, the words pouring out now. "Speech therapists, psychologists, neurologists, even hypnotists. I've tried medication, therapy, special schools. Nothing works. So I'm offering everything I have. Everything." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered about grief driving him mad. Another mentioned the scandal it would cause. A neurologist who had treated Leo last year stepped forward tentatively. "Mr. Thorne, selective mutism requires consistent, gentle. Gentle hasn't worked for 3 years. Marcus cut him off. "Not since the accident." The accident. Even now, he couldn't bring himself to name it properly. Couldn't say, "Not since my wife's car plunged off the coastal highway with Leo in the back seat. Not since my 7-year-old watched his mother die while rescuers took 40 minutes to cut him free. Not since the last word my son spoke was, 'Mommy,' as they loaded her body into an ambulance." From the back of the room, someone snapped a photo. Tomorrow, this moment would be splashed across tabloids. Billionaire offers fortune for son's first words. Grief-stricken tycoon's desperate marriage pact. Let them write what they wanted. He'd endured worse press after Catherine's death, when rumors circulated that their argument earlier that day had distracted her driving. "This isn't appropriate for a charity gala," the chairman of the Children's Hospital Board hissed, approaching Marcus. "Think of your reputation. Think of Leo." "I think of nothing else," Marcus replied, loud enough for others to hear. "Every specialist, every treatment, every sleepless night, it's all for him." And still, he slips further away. Across the room, Leo had found a place to hide behind a large floral arrangement. Only his small patent leather shoes were visible beneath the tablecloth. Marcus felt a familiar stab of helplessness. Even with all his wealth and power, he couldn't reach his own son. "I'll sign the contracts tomorrow," he announced, draining his champagne. "Legal, binding agreements. Make my son speak, marry me, inherit everything." The crowd's reaction transformed from shock to calculation. Society women who had politely declined his dinner invitations suddenly reassessed his eligibility. Speech therapists mentally reviewed experimental techniques they hadn't dared suggest before. Gold diggers who had been working less direct angles saw a shortcut to fortune. Only one person moved toward Leo rather than Marcus. Elena Vasquez had been working the event as part of the catering staff, another invisible person in a black uniform circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres. She'd been assigned to this station an hour ago, silently replacing empty platters while the wealthy discussed donations over champagne. She'd watched Leo throughout the evening, his hunched shoulders, his careful movements, the way his eyes followed conversations as if cataloging every word others took for granted. She recognized that silence. Had lived in it herself once. Setting down her tray, Elena knelt beside the table where Leo had hidden. She didn't speak or try to coax him out. Instead, she simply sat on the floor, a clear violation of staff protocol, and waited. From her pocket, she withdrew a small notepad and pen she used for orders and placed them on the floor between them. On the notepad, she drew a simple star. Then pushed it toward his hiding place. After a long moment, a small hand emerged and pulled the notepad under the tablecloth. Across the room, Marcus was now surrounded by people offering suggestions, connections, and thinly veiled propositions. Someone mentioned a revolutionary clinic in Switzerland. Another suggested a spiritual healer who had worked miracles with trauma victims. A striking redhead who had ignored him all evening now stood suspiciously close, her hand resting on his arm as she mentioned her master's degree in child psychology. None of them noticed the notepad sliding back out from under the table, now bearing a wobbly circle next to Elena's star. Elena smiled and drew a simple face inside the circle, then slid it back. This exchange continued, their impromptu game of tic-tac-toe expanding to 3 rounds while the commotion around Marcus grew louder. By the third game, Leo had added small details to his circles, first eyelashes, then a tiny frown. The catering manager spotted Elena sitting on the floor and stormed over, face flushed with anger. "What do you think you're doing? Get up immediately!" Elena rose smoothly, tucking the notepad into her pocket. "I apologize, sir." The manager lowered his voice to a furious whisper. "This is exactly why we don't hire people without references. One more mistake and you're done. Now get back to the kitchen." As Elena turned to leave, she felt a tug on her uniform. Leo had emerged from his hiding place, his small face solemn as he looked up at her. He didn't speak, but his fingers closed around the edge of her black jacket. The manager's reprimand died on his lips as he recognized the Thorn heir. "Young Mr. Thorn," he stammered, "is everything all right?" Leo didn't acknowledge him. His eyes remained fixed on Elena, his grip tightening on her uniform. "I should return to work," Elena said gently to Leo, careful not to touch him or make any sudden movements. "Thank you for the game." As she attempted to step away, Leo moved with her, maintaining his hold on her jacket. For a child who typically avoided physical contact with anyone but his father, this was unprecedented. The commotion attracted attention. Conversations faltered as heads turned toward the curious tableau, the catering staff member, the angry manager, and the silent boy who refused to let go. Marcus Thorn broke away from his circle of sudden admirers, crossing the room in long strides. "Leo?" The single word carried equal parts hope and worry. Leo still didn't speak, but neither did he retreat to his hiding place. Instead, he pulled the notepad from Elena's pocket and held it up to his father. Marcus took it, brow furrowed as he studied the tic-tac-toe games, the small faces they had drawn. His expression shifted from confusion to something unreadable as he looked from the paper to Elena. "Who are you?" he asked, the question sharper than he intended. "Elena Vasquez, sir. Temporary staff for tonight's event." Her voice was soft but clear, with just a trace of an accent. "I apologize for the distraction." Before Marcus could respond, Leo tugged the notepad back and scribbled something on a fresh page. He showed it first to Elena, then hesitantly to his father. On the page was a single word, "Stay." The manager cleared his throat. "Mr. Thorn, I assure you this staff member will be disciplined appropriately." "No." Marcus's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "No, she won't." He looked at Elena with new intensity. "My son hasn't connected with anyone since his mother died. Not doctors, not therapists, not me." His voice dropped. "How did you do that in 5 minutes?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "I didn't try to make him speak, sir." And that was the moment she stepped forward, still in her catering uniform, a serving tray abandoned nearby. The room fell completely silent as she spoke again, this time loud enough for others to hear. "Sir," Elena said, her voice steady despite the hundreds of eyes now fixed on her. "Leo doesn't need someone to make him speak. He needs someone to hear what he's already saying." The video of Marcus Thorn's desperate declaration went viral overnight. From Tokyo to Toronto, millions watched the clip, a billionaire offering his fortune and his hand in marriage to whoever could make his silent son speak again. Comments flooded in from around the world. Watching from Sydney, that poor little boy. Madrid here. Is this legal? Can he really offer marriage like that? Chicago's psychologist here. This approach could cause more trauma to the child. NYC. I'd marry him for free if I could help that kid. What the viral clips didn't show was what happened after that first night, after the guests had left, after Leo had finally fallen asleep clutching Elena's notepad, after Marcus had made the first impulsive decision in his meticulously controlled life. You start tomorrow, he told Elena in his wood-paneled study at 2 a.m., sliding an employment contract across his desk. As Leo's companion. Elena looked down at the salary figure, more money than she'd made in the past 3 years combined, and then back at Marcus. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened, the perfect veneer of the evening completely dissolved. I'm not qualified, she said simply. I'm not a therapist or a teacher. You connected with my son. That's qualification enough. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Unless the money isn't sufficient? The money is. Elena chose her words carefully. Very generous. But I need to be clear about something, Mr. Thorne. I won't try to make Leo speak. That has to be his choice. Marcus leaned forward. Then why did you apply for this catering job tonight? The timing seems convenient. I work 3 jobs, Mr. Thorne. The agency called, I accepted. She met his gaze directly. I didn't know about your son until tonight. Something in her straightforward answer seemed to satisfy him. 3 jobs? Catering evenings, cleaning mornings, bookstore weekends. She didn't mention the night classes she was taking, or the mountain of medical debt that had necessitated this schedule in the first place. Not anymore, Marcus said, tapping the contract. Now you have 1 job. Leo. By morning, the Thorne estate was besieged. News vans lined the private road leading to the gates. Marcus's phone rang continuously with calls from reporters, talk shows, and reality TV producers offering exclusive rights to document the search for Leo's voice. His PR team worked frantically to contain the damage, issuing a statement claiming Mr. Thorne's offer had been misconstrued and was meant as a private initiative to find advanced therapeutic help for his son. Nobody believed it. By noon, the first opportunists arrived. A woman claiming to be a child whisperer somehow made it past security before being escorted out. A renowned speech pathologist called to offer her services. Free of charge, with exclusive rights to publish the case study. 3 marriage proposals arrived by courier. Through it all, Marcus remained in his home office, blinds drawn, as his team tried to clean up the mess he'd created. 1 floor above, in Leo's wing of the house, Elena arrived for her first day as the boy's companion, carrying only a small backpack of personal items. She would be staying in the adjoining room to Leo's suite, the room that had once belonged to his mother's personal assistant. Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper who had served the Thorne family for 20 years, met Elena at the service entrance with thinly veiled suspicion. Mr. Thorne has informed me of your unusual hiring circumstances, she said, leading Elena through the maze of hallways. I feel obligated to warn you that others have tried to connect with Leo before. The results were not successful. I understand, Elena replied quietly. No, I don't think you do. Mrs. Henderson stopped walking, turning to face Elena directly. That boy has been through more than anyone should endure. If you're here because of Mr. Thorne's impulsive offer last night, if you think this is some sort of shortcut to wealth, I'm here because Leo asked me to stay, Elena interrupted. That's all. Mrs. Henderson studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. His routine is posted in his room. He likes his sandwiches cut into quarters, not triangles. No loud noises, no surprises, no physical contact unless he initiates it. As they approached Leo's door, Mrs. Henderson lowered her voice. And one more thing. Mr. Thorne has instructed that you are to focus solely on Leo. You are not to engage with any of the interested parties who may contact the house regarding Mr. Thorne's offer. The implication was clear. Whatever had happened last night, Elena was not being considered as a potential candidate for Marcus Thorne's desperate proposition. She was staff, nothing more. I understand completely, Elena said. Mrs. Henderson seemed satisfied with this response. Leo should be finishing his breakfast. I'll leave you to get acquainted with your duties. She hesitated, then added, He's a special boy. Before the accident, he was always laughing. With that, she turned and walked away, her sensible shoes silent on the plush carpet. Elena took a deep breath and knocked softly on Leo's door. No response came. She hadn't expected one. But when she gently pushed the door open, she found Leo sitting cross-legged on the floor, the notepad from last night open in front of him. He'd filled several pages with drawings, stars, circles, a house, what appeared to be a dog. He looked up when she entered, his expression guarded but not unwelcoming. Good morning, Elena said, closing the door behind her. I brought something for you. She unzipped her backpack and pulled out a small, worn book with a faded blue cover. It's called The Little Prince. My grandmother used to read it to me. The pictures aren't as good as your drawings, but I thought you might like it. Leo didn't move to take the book, but he watched as Elena set it on the floor between them. You don't have to read it, she continued, sitting down a comfortable distance away. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do when I'm here. For the first time, a hint of confusion crossed Leo's face. Every adult in his life wanted something from him, wanted him to speak, to participate, to show progress, to be normal again. This woman was offering nothing? Cautiously, Leo pushed his notepad toward her. On a fresh page he'd written, Why are you here? Elena read it and smiled. Because you asked me to stay. Remember? Leo considered this, then wrote again, Are you going to marry my dad? The directness of the question startled a small laugh from Elena. No. That's not why I'm here. Leo's brow furrowed. He wrote, but he said, Your dad made that offer for someone who makes you speak. Elena explained gently. I told him I won't try to make you do that. Speaking is your choice, always. Leo stared at her for a long moment, processing this information. Then he wrote, They all try to make me. I won't, Elena promised. Not ever. Something shifted in Leo's expression, a subtle relaxation, the smallest release of tension he'd carried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He reached for the book she'd brought, running his fingers over the worn cover before setting it aside. Then he wrote a new message, Want to see my room? It was the first invitation he'd extended to anyone in 3 years. By the end of the first week, Marcus Thorne's impulsive offer had become international news. The story had everything: wealth, grief, desperation, and the irresistible hook of a father willing to sacrifice anything for his child. #whoever makes my son speak trended globally. Morning shows debated the ethics. Tabloids speculated wildly about the identity of the mystery maid, who had been hired after the gala. Marcus retreated further into his office as his publicity team tried to manage the fallout. His phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, distant relatives, and opportunists. Marriage proposals arrived daily, some touching, most transparent in their motives. His inbox filled with guaranteed methods to cure selective mutism, each more outlandish than the last. We need to issue a formal retraction, his attorney insisted during an emergency meeting. The marriage offer creates potential legal liability. Anyone could claim they made your son speak and demand you fulfill your end of the bargain. I'm not retracting anything, Marcus said, staring out the window at the reporters camped outside his gate. I meant what I said. Then at least let us formalize the parameters, his PR director suggested. We'll announce an official challenge with clear guidelines, medical verification, witnessed interactions. We can turn this into a controlled situation. Marcus nodded slowly. Fine. Set it up. The press conference was held 3 days later. Marcus, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that couldn't quite hide the weight he'd lost, stood at a podium on his front steps. Cameras flashed as he cleared his throat. Last week, I made an offer that many found shocking, he began, reading from the carefully prepared statement. Today, I want to confirm that my offer stands. Whoever can help my son Leo speak again will indeed receive $20 million and, if they so choose, my hand in marriage. He looked up from the paper, his eyes finding the camera directly. But let me be clear, this is not a contest or a game. My son is not a prize to be won. He is a child who has experienced unimaginable trauma, and his well-being remains my only priority. Marcus outlined the new protocols. Applicants would need to submit credentials for review. Qualified specialists would be invited for supervised sessions. Any progress would be documented and verified by an independent medical team. The process would be discreet, private, and focused solely on Leo's benefit. What he didn't mention was that Leo hadn't left his wing of the house since the night of the gala, refusing to see any of the specialists already scheduled. The only person he allowed near him was Elena. As camera crews packed up their equipment, Marcus was approached by Dr. Winters, the family's longtime physician and one of the few people he still trusted. "How is he really doing?" Dr. Winters asked quietly. Marcus sighed. "He's the same. Except for this connection with the new caretaker." "And you're certain she doesn't have an ulterior motive? Her background checks out? Nothing remarkable in her history. Immigrant family, scholarship to state university, medical leave that interrupted her studies." Marcus frowned. "My security team found nothing concerning, just someone working multiple jobs to stay afloat. And now she has unprecedented access to your son and household," Dr. Winters observed. "While you've publicly offered marriage to whoever breaks through to him. You don't see the potential problem?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "She's not interested in the offer. Made that quite clear?" "They all say that at first," Dr. Winters replied gently. "Just be careful, Marcus. Not everyone has Leo's best interests at heart." The warning lingered as Marcus returned inside, where the first officially vetted specialist was waiting, a renowned child psychologist who had flown in from Switzerland. "Mr. Thorne," she greeted him, extending her hand. "I've reviewed Leo's file extensively. With your permission, I'd like to begin with play therapy sessions." "Whatever you think best," Marcus said wearily. "Mrs. Henderson will show you to the playroom we've prepared. Leo's caretaker will bring him down shortly." Upstairs, Elena was reading to Leo from The Little Prince. Over the past week, they had fallen into a comfortable routine. Mornings were for quiet activities, reading, drawing, or simply sitting together by the window watching birds at the feeder Elena had helped him install. Afternoons sometimes involved gentle outings to the estate's gardens, always avoiding the areas visible from the gates where photographers might lurk. Leo still hadn't spoken, but his notepad communications had become more frequent and complex. He asked questions about Elena's life. He shared small details about things he remembered from before: his mother's perfume, a trip to the beach, a dog they'd considered adopting. Today, he seemed particularly content, curled up on the window seat as Elena's voice brought the story to life. When Mrs. Henderson knocked on the door, his body immediately tensed. "Ms. Vasquez?" the housekeeper said formally. "The specialist has arrived. Mr. Thorne requests that you bring Leo to the playroom." Elena felt Leo's hand grip her sleeve, their established signal for "No. Please tell Mr. Thorne that Leo isn't feeling up to it right now," Elena replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Perhaps tomorrow would be better." Mrs. Henderson's lips thinned. "These appointments have been arranged at great expense and inconvenience. Mr. Thorne was quite clear." "I understand," Elena interrupted gently. "But my responsibility is to Leo's well-being. He's communicating that he doesn't want to go, and forcing him would undo the trust we've built." The standoff lasted several seconds before Mrs. Henderson turned with a disapproving sniff. "I'll inform Mr. Thorne of his son's preference." When she had gone, Leo quickly scribbled on his notepad, "Thank you. You never have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable," Elena reminded him. "Not even for your dad." Leo considered this, then wrote, "Dad is sad." Elena chose her words carefully. "Your dad loves you very much. He wants to help you, But sometimes grown-ups don't know the best way to help. Leo nodded slowly, then added, he wants old Leo back. The simple observation broke Elena's heart. You're still Leo, she said softly. Maybe different than before, but still you. Leo stared out the window for a long moment before writing again. I remember how to talk. Elena kept her expression neutral despite her surprise. This was the first time he'd addressed his silence directly. I believe you, she said simply. Leo wrote again, his small hand pressing hard against the paper. I can't make the words come out. That's okay, Elena assured him. The words will come when they're ready. Downstairs, Marcus was apologizing to the specialist from Switzerland, who was barely concealing her irritation. I've rearranged my entire schedule to be here, Mr. Thorne. If your son isn't committed to the process. He's 7 years old, Marcus interrupted, his patience wearing thin. And he's been through trauma most adults couldn't handle. If he's not ready today, we'll try again tomorrow. The specialist gathered her materials with a tight smile. Perhaps you should consider whether your son's caretaker is facilitating progress or enabling his withdrawal. After she left, Marcus stood alone in the carefully prepared playroom, surrounded by the toys and games the specialist had arranged. The room felt like another failure to add to his growing collection. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. Dr. Levinson arrived early for his 2 p.m. evaluation. Should I send him in? Marcus typed back. Cancel all appointments for today. Then, ignoring the immediate call that followed his message, he headed upstairs to his son's room. He knocked once, then opened the door to find Leo and Elena sitting together on the window seat, a book open between them. Leo didn't look up, but Elena met Marcus's gaze directly. He doesn't want to see the specialist, she said, answering the unasked question. So I gathered. Marcus stayed in the doorway, suddenly feeling like a visitor in his own home, in his son's life. May I join you? Leo glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. His father rarely came to his room anymore. Their interactions were usually limited to formal dinner times or scheduled activities. After a moment's hesitation, Leo nodded. Marcus crossed the room carefully and sat on the edge of the window seat. What are you reading? Elena showed him the cover of The Little Prince. Your mother loved that book, Marcus said softly to Leo. She had a copy in French too. She wanted to read it to you in both languages when you were older. Leo's eyes widened slightly. He reached for his notepad and wrote, You never talk about MOM. The simple observation struck Marcus like a physical blow. When had he stopped mentioning Catherine? In trying to protect Leo from painful memories, had he erased the good ones too? I can talk about her, Marcus offered tentatively. If you want me to. Leo nodded vigorously, then wrote, Elena says memories keep people with us. Marcus looked at Elena with new appreciation. Elena is very wise, he said, meaning it. Then to Leo. What would you like to know about Mom? For the next hour, Marcus shared stories he'd kept locked away for 3 years. How he and Catherine had met during a rainstorm when she'd stolen his umbrella by mistake. How she'd laughed when he proposed because he was so nervous he'd dropped the ring. How she'd sung off-key lullabies when Leo was a baby. Leo drank in every word, occasionally writing questions that Marcus answered as honestly as he could. The sun was setting when Mrs. Henderson appeared again, clearly surprised to find Marcus still there. Dinner is ready, sir, she announced. And there's been a development with the press situation. Your assistant says it's urgent. Marcus sighed, the real world intruding once more. I'll be right down. To Leo he added, Thank you for letting me stay. Perhaps we could read together again tomorrow? Leo nodded, then impulsively reached out and squeezed his father's hand, the first physical contact he'd initiated with Marcus in months. As Marcus followed Mrs. Henderson downstairs, his mind was still upstairs with Leo. He barely registered her words until one phrase cut through his thoughts. Claiming to be Elena Vasquez's sister. She's talking to reporters about Elena's past. Marcus stopped walking. What did you say? A woman at the gate, Mrs. Henderson repeated. She says she's Ms. Vasquez's sister, and that there are things about Elena's history you should know. Something about why she doesn't speak much about her past. Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Have security bring her to my office. Discreetly. As he walked away, he couldn't help wondering if Dr. Winters had been right to question Elena's motives. Had he been so desperate for anyone who could connect with Leo that he'd overlooked something important? The woman waiting in his office looked nothing like Elena. Where Elena was composed and soft-spoken, this woman was all sharp edges and nervous energy. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the expensive furnishings with poorly concealed calculation. Mess. Marcus left the question hanging. Diaz. Lucia Diaz. She extended a hand with long, manicured nails. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Thorne. I'm concerned about my sister's presence in your home. You don't share the same last name, Marcus observed, not taking her hand. Lucia waved dismissively. Different fathers. But that's not why I'm here. Has Elena told you about her condition? What condition? Marcus asked, keeping his voice neutral. The reason she understands your son so well. Lucia leaned forward. Elena didn't speak for nearly 2 years after the accident. Not a single word.